ja yoxatini ch'akatuhan ya chakuksa owe yohan chu oya wuch khatu sik aya ya hayu hakusti ye owa ya ta kwasadat yutukhotam yiwakshi ekakasane kayi in kakwani kata kiat kliat ke shukwa let's dech atoe adat yutukhotam shachuka ka nats kla Hasti yejene ka achtu yake yelchene owe achin yuchewatan adatawe yuchatank aya ya ha yuchatangi ya du hastu wakshi gacht was gut tesati ja der like ja achtu was go hastu ya isatini ʼáak owe ya hachan hasbu aten ye owe ya hastu yejene kachanach Lekuzi Shah Dang Tini Hasjiwane Wasa Achtuasagu das Ach Echakutien as die Yuchatangi Ayacho Aachen Ja Ye Awechwa Ach Kwash Angun Ke Haswatien We Wasa Duasag Kitch An Naki Decho Adach Yata Ish Kwan Hagu Ish Kwan Hagu Gechoji Hidosag Ayayata Alchewuti we Shingerkinach Yuchasha Atki Adatawe Yu Hasawa Ach Awe Ade Haswukuch Hechasiku Gotkinsa 1969, 1960, 1970 Golkiwe Duchahati Awe Kawabwast Hete Shuwatan Duchahati Hechasiku Wasaye Hasawaka Shingit Enach Gwash Yikeach Satini Wasa Ieti Rachel Hitch Wechahan Wana Nisoitsu Hasakawa Manach Saya Hayata Ya Hitchi Hitch Wechahan Yehojian Tsiki Kawu Hisati Kelka Tashas Awasku Yahayutank Ye Awa has to Yejine Da Yutachotank One Panins Adat Watu We Yuchatank Ya Achtua Sagu Yahad Yejine Yedat Yuchakwatani Aka Awe Yata Wahlisaku Ade Kaduakaya Kayadu Kayadukaya Dech Ayukatanku Tukwatanku Shukwa Yata Kashasit Kashasit Aka Yisaku 0 with conjugation. Hast du Shachawu Kadil Tzitchin. Aka Utisaku Kadil Tzitch. Was Kadil Tzitch Ayahakas. Jaguk. So Kaya dazu. Duksa. Kasatik. Ja, dem. Katis tik. Ye away afterwards ago. Yet cleared gate away you quatanya da. Which agudach I a tag of Konkian, Kaohan, the Yidati Puu, Joe Oya, Katis tick, Yas the Katakosi, Yaslingiti Tangitin, Gilchish a Redis Achi. Ya Yidet way you Katankada Yajakachtini. Ya do. Adisa de Toasaku ki nach atu sha dang Katangi. Good. Can somebody read this? The Shah Dog one.
Aya ada tuchatangi aya has chut agudach yesati hastu in geya ujdach hawustagin ye aya adayu tuchatangi nut achaya ye kat ha kawadiya yuhankua shadach.
Sheesh. Hasadu sagt leit Kagreina. Shah Dog.
Robert
Dakanach Sawusati. Wusti.
Nada or gudach?
Dak nach sa sati. Khataya Lukach adi Agwantam.
The shitan.
eetí.
Good sheesh.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is grab the verbs. And oops, I do have, I have a different one. That's kind of, well, okay. Maybe I'll, yeah. I don't know if I can find the other one. I haven't looked at it in a long time. Oh, here it is. Okay. We could, okay. Let's do this one first, and I'll show you another one, okay? Is there anything in the preverb?
You.
You. Is there an object here?
Two.
How well do we know this theme? The aadé should be a very big hint.
What you're thinking about?
Well, is there an object pronoun? What I want us to do is pull this thing apart. And by pulling it apart, we should be able
to. I'll be willing to be wrong. I'm gonna say no because I had two as a thematic.
Okay.
both of those. Is there any conjugation, any of the 4 conjugation spots have anything in them?
No.
No. Oh, is there a subject? What would the classifier look like?
0. No.
And okay. Make bigger. Okay. And what is the stem variation? I'm not trying to get you to write down the root. What I'm only curious about is the vowel. So your answer will be short, high, long, low. Those are your three options.
Short high.
Is there a suffix?
Oh,
What might they be?
Hey,
Okay.
And
and the I.
yeah,
Oh.
going back up, I don't see anything. There's nothing else after that. Ada. So there you have tu, cha, then you have tun, k, I. So that means we should have like some sort of U2 what ton. So ton. So now we should be able to say, okay, we kind of know this verb, right? It means wow.
Understand, to know inside.
Well, you got to do this to get to that.
Think about.
So this would be I am thinking about it. Now, this one, just to sort of let's go take a look at the old database here. Just to go down to Tom, see what might be going on. Look at that. Right at the beginning, maybe. So this one has two A's in it. Tunk, which is interesting. Because I guess so does this one. Okay. Oh, I get it. So what we usually have in this verb, we usually have, oops, it's the wrong set of verbs. That one. So that was last night's work. So we do have a da, you, to, hua, tunk, which for this particular verb, it's a little tricky. I guess I would say that is an imperfective. It's really, I think, impossible to tell if it's imperfective or repetitive. I think, because just to double check that theory, and that you just have a bit of a unique verb here. So by that you have, so ada, yutu watunk. And so what we do have ada yutu chatunk, yutu watunk. And then we go down here and we have ada yutu watunk. So it's a situation where they actually conjugate the same in those two modes. And I think the reason is because this one just uses that repetitive all the time. It just gets kind of baked in there. That K, usually that K is with a n conjugation verb going into the repetitive mode. You're usually going to have you're going to have U in the front as a preverb. You're going to have a plus I classifier, and you're going to have a K at the end. That seems to be the pattern. And so and then some of them, there might be a different one, or there might not be an imperfective. And so in terms of like how we use that to interpret stuff, what we have going on here is a switch to the minus I classifier because of this suffix, this relational suffix being added, which makes it subordinate. So I would say you have when or that I was thinking, or I am thinking about, I guess. Which we can come back later and see. And we can also check the longer and just see if this is tied to anything else. So, yeah, here it is. When I am thinking about it, or that I am thinking about it. T'aawáḳ. Here's our second verb. Eetí. Let's grab this thing and come back and reset all of this. Is there a preverb?
Yay.
And we'll take as well. And which is the contraction of hus.
Us.
Would there be an object here? Do we know what this verb would be in the imperfective? Just a straight imperfective of this verb. Do we recognize what this verb is?
Eetí.
Yeah. Yay. So then we know, we should know this verb. It has an object in there. So we're going to say the object is 0. There's no thematic. There is no conjugation stuff because there is no prefix on this verb. It's all going to be a bunch of 0 stuff. So that means the classifier we know is 0. The stem is long and low. And there's a suffix. So here's another. And so this one, oops, I want to go up. And this one is a subordinate. Imperfective. And you know what? So then coming back, we were saying this is that or when they all are there. Okay. When or that, I'm thinking about it. From long ago, they are there. Hast du ihn gewunscht? So we know that there is a question. We know that there's some other stuff. But I think to get to the verb, I'm just going to grab these 3 words. Go down here. Grab our little table. Okay. What's in the preverb?
Woensdag.
Woensdag. Do we know what woensdag is?
From being together.
That's correct. Is there an object pronoun there?
Oh,
2 things in the conjugation, and we know what they might be. They do blend together. It's 2 becoming 1.
Is it ya and ya?
Well,
Or ya and ya, something like that?
it's and y. Irrealis perfect. This is what you're going to get for the negative perfective. You will always get these 2, which is kind of a trick answer because they will always just smush together. This is what they do. Like we're both here, but we just wear one jacket and hide inside of it.
It's like those kids from Little Rascals.
Yeah, right. Or yeah, and I saw another cartoon where it was like Minions or something. They all got into one jacket. Yeah. There is no subject in this verb. There's no thematic in this verb. What is the classifier?
That's
It's going to look a little different than what you see there.
S plus.
Something has been removed. What has been removed?
H.
I.
Only Southern Tlingits have a license to remove the I from the classifier. Everyone else's license is revoked permanently. That's the only thing you could take. Northern Tlingit, anyone who's not Southern Tlingit, as far as I know, the letter A is the only thing you can drop from a classifier. And just to sort of, if we look, I guess we could do something like some little formatting thing. We could say, hey, let's make this side border real thick. Just so we mark where the prefix ends. So here's the classifier. We look to the left, and there's nothing stopping or y from touching it. That letter A's got to go. That is a constant. There's a constant in Tlingit. And I do it all the time. I think I did it just a minute ago. I was saying, like if you say, you can't say tesh wusati. You should say tesh wusti. Right? Tesh wusti. Tesh, you shouldn't say, I don't think. Tesh ausiku. You would say tesh awuska. Because this is like, this A in the classifier says to both of these things, of arealis and perfective, don't touch me. I will leave. Now we have what's our vowel for our stem?
Long and low.
What is our suffix?
The in the yeah.
Okay, so and we could go away from being together. We could say us. We could say arealis perfective. If we wanted to, we can go S. That's just the S classifier. Well, I guess I was writing CL period S. And there's no plus D, there's no plus I, so I don't need to write them. If there was a plus D, I'd put it right there. If there's a plus I, I'd put it right there. There's neither. Do we know the perfective of this? I'll do the first. Which dach? Okay, I did my part. Do we know this verb? If we want to talk about clan migrations.
Ausadar.
Gal.
I learned the verb yesterday because it was interesting to me that dock inland is the same as dock, the stem dock to migrate.
Oh, how cool. That's a great connection. So yeah, we can, I don't have to give you the answer, like we can look it up. Yeah, so this is a state verb to move your household. So there, you wouldn't have the letter A in front of it. It's always only going to have an object. So this is the migrating verb. And there's two general ways when we talk about clans migrating. And I think they're both under move. So we'll look at move and then I'll just talk about them from there. And this is all going to help us to continue to understand these big stories when we look at them. So when we get into the moving verbs, let's see. So here, this is to move permanently. So sometimes when you talk about wushdach, hausadach, a lot of times I do think you're talking about our house. I guess it's long enough. Sorry about that. Oh wait. Okay, yeah. It's a motion verb. But when you're using this verb, you're just saying this is when we split and we never got back together, as far as clans go. So oftentimes you're talking about, yeah, we became this group, they became that group. That marked a time, because there is another one, which is right here. And this means we're just gonna go. And then it has K in front of it, which is very handy because now we know this one is ga. I do think this one, when you get ich, day, or you get dach, I do expect it to be na conjugation in that case. Just follow rules of motion verbs. But this one would be like, okay, well, this one group decided to leave this village. No major thing happened. We just wanted to go somewhere else. So then that's when you would say, gods. And so that's when you would say, like, we migrated over, just like an expansion, going somewhere else. But sometimes, not every time, but sometimes there's some major event. Like we decided to go our separate ways, or there was a fight over a hat, often a lady, hat or a woman, and then like there was this big separation. And so coming back to our verb, now we know this is our a migration verb. Wuchdach hawusdakin. So now, and like, I guess the decessive on there is really interesting too. So to get to a decessive, it's gonna look, so we say tlesh wuch. Let me fix this. So you say tlesh wuchdach ha wusdak. So when you have this, you have tlesh, but if you took that off and you added the suffix, it looks exactly the same. So this is why I like to think of modes these days as build like a submode of a mode. If you learn how to build a negative perfective, you can now build a decessive. We used to separate from each other. And like, maybe there's a little more work to do. I don't know, like migrating. And maybe what he's talking about is like this formation of like all these ancient clans. Let me know if you have thoughts.
I was wondering why it's gain instead of like gin or gun.
That one I do believe can be short or long. It's just speaker,
Okay, thanks.
but it's going to be a letter I, unless it's rounded, then it'll be a U. So we have to follow all the rules of whether it's rounded or not. Just like if there's a relational suffix or an attributive suffix, they will all follow that same vowel rule. I'm an I, unless you're rounded, then I'll be a U.
Kunai,
Ah,
what is the gay doing? Yeah.
oh, okay, yeah. Aya ada yutachatangi aya. When I am, maybe it's like that I am thinking about it. Hus, them, chuchagudach yesti, the ones that were there long time ago. Hastu inge yawujdach hawusdaken. Had we before separated from them? That's what I think he's saying. If we reassemble this whole sentence, there are some things like we could check the text and we could check the recording, but there are some like next level stuff going on here when you start a sentence with this subordinate thing. Seth Cable was messing around with these. He called it the insubordinate clause, which was my favorite name for something. It's like, I do what I want to, but it's just saying it looks like it's tied to something. He was theorizing it's tying to like every story ever told or something. I mean, who knows, right? Like this is very advanced stuff. But that's where we get to which we should be. Can we do this without pulling all the pieces apart? How do we translate this?
I'm always thinking about it.
Yeah. And so, this is how it is. I'm always thinking about it.
I got a question.
Yeah.
If it was what you just said it was, which is, wouldn't it be Turkatunk?
Oh, yes, but some of them they just get a vowel that ties it to the next thing. Because you could say ʼakaduneek, and then there's a bunch of speakers who would probably say ʼakaduneek. And it doesn't affect the verb. It's just there to get us to the next sound.
Okay, so I guess my question is that I is not because it's possessed by da.
It could be, but I don't expect it to be, because usually when you say what you're thinking about, you don't really tie them together that way. I don't think, because it would be that when that happened, I was thinking of this. That would be more like that type of thing. Yeah. And so if we look at this, well, let's translate this last part, and then we'll come back and sort of talk about that. And it could be that he's tying it there again, and there could be like there's some really, really cool theories about this stuff that I get excited to teach, like the fourth year thing, because we get to talk about that kind of stuff. We're not exactly sure why. We see him starting 2 sentences in a row like this, with this, what looks like, and we can't tell what kind of suffix it is, but it sure looks like a relational suffix, which would mark a subordinate verb, saying it's tied to something else. And it's usually, it's this one because of the other one, right? Or that, or when the other one. It is good that I have seen you. I am thankful that you have come here, right? And so like this would be the one, but we don't see something that makes sense that I am thinking of it, right? Maybe. I think it's more, maybe it creates this really open-ended type of thing. If I were to say this with my much, much lower level of language ability, I would say, but there's stuff that he knows how to do that I don't know how to do, which is very fun.
So about that, why is it just, how can it just be T? Why isn't it like uti or wuti?
This is one that seems to, when it goes into a subordinate form, it's perfectly acceptable to just be T. I see it a lot, right? And so this is one that, and there might be others that just do that, but I've also seen it as uti, but it's probably like yes uti. Like it seems like you could say that. And so I'm not really sure. There might be a rule there. Like the rules for the subordinate like are really interesting to me, and would probably have to consult some pretty high level stuff to start getting into, is there always an aerialis there, or is there a time when there is and isn't? For me, when I just learn these verbs, I just use T. That's because that's how I usually heard it. That's how I remember George saying it when he would say these things like this. They were happy that it was there, right? And that's how I remember hearing it. And so that's usually what I just go with. And so you have nothing there's no prefix on that verb. It's wild.
So usually when there's no prefix on a verb, I'm assuming it's a consecutive, but it's probably not that you're saying.
Yeah, I do believe the consecutive shouldn't have a suffix on it.
Okay.
I think it's usually a long high.
Okay.
And this is also, to get the consecutive, I think you'd have to have nati, maybe, because the na would have to, like, we know that's a na conjugation verb. So in the consecutive, the conjugation prefix of the verb is activated. So, and that's where you have to know, like, kashat after they caught it, and then you could say, so you'd say hat gut aya after they got here, adak nagut aya after they left here. So the na would have to be there because the conjugation prefix would change. Those are great questions.
I like it when you find it in that one, Nisawe,
Mhm.
Yeah, it's same.
Yeah, like nani, right? Which
Yeah.
you don't hear that very often because I guess you could say, yay nani, like make it happen. Let it happen. I don't know. You probably have to be a horror for them. Yay nakani or yay nakani. Okay. What about how kaudiya?
We moved or traveled.
Yeah, so let's go
Boat came to shore.
now kaudiya. And so ya is one of these ones with a whole bunch of verbs. Oh, I'm looking at ha. Hold on. To move, to happen. And so I would say it's probably this one, just based on like hearing these stories and knowing this particular verb. This is a verb that does have quite a few different sort of uses. Like I think it might be helpful to go find it in the verb notes, which I'll open up now.
Are you talking about we happened to be here?
Yeah, like and so looking at this verb, so here's kaudiya. And if we look at this is the way we are, would be told after telling a clan history. That's how it is. It's an immutable fact. And so it's like, this is how things happened. And so I was actually at a meeting the other day and someone used this. It was a very intense conversation. And when they were saying, aadé, it was something like that. And they were saying the way that it happened to us. And so usually when I hear ʼakaduneek, it's like what happened to us. But it's more than like we were just there and this thing happened to us. It was like this whole like how did we become ourselves? How do we become who we are? That's when you start getting into this ʼakaduneek verb, which seems to be a very big verb. Like this is how it happened, right? And so it does mean to travel. Like you could say, wait, they went that way, right? But it seems to me like it would be worth studying this verb because it does seem like if we look at the notes, like they just wandered off. They just went on out, right? And so it seems to imply that there are major things that happen. And then there was a note here that it's related to kau to ha, right? And which we'll look that one up as well because these are very big verbs when it comes to like oratory and tlingit. So we've got disappearing, moving unseen, but sneaking away. I don't know if that's always the same though. And so this kaudiya, when they say kaudiya, that's usually like it's saying this is how we came to be, the shukach adi, the kicks adi, so it's a very useful thing to know how to say and when to say. Okay, that's one. We only did one. And so day away. We'll come back. We got 14 weeks left, something like that. All the time in the world is spent. We got to do Dukt'ootlʼ. Away. T'aawáḳ Hasidata we yutakhatang. Guksaye hasputian. Wasa atwune. Hasuin. Khokne away a kaushhidyata. Keka. We ichki shingit haswustian. T'aawáḳ T'aawáḳ an aye hasputian. Khosakuya yidat tsutskan ani. Klinkitani ayako ʼáak. A'awe. Henia kwan. Kanachwe has to dat you to hotankzu. Tan. You'd be a sock with art claim. A car aya ye has for teen. A car aya ye has yeti. A car aya ye has got what tea. We guksa koa. Quash achtuasagu. Yata. Guksa. When Kanins Kanachwe dat. You just when a dat the way you took hotank yata. We cook. As a couch hit ne ka hoy nak ka was a good thing at sai Andy home ka yisatin ya a cling ko a die has chiwanayan yisakuge desai ach sunny clean aya stu a ka cheese yisatin ge a clean she the hen ko a die has chiwanay yeah just ach e khat butien clear ka kanachwe dat you to hotank as die nach sati ya kaya ko ko you wasa atune you kash asa aye eetí takchik an yak takchik an henya yak weshkashnik wash yak ewutien kachon ish ʼakaduneek klektihin ach ka kastin we each kat aya hohan gugsa Dukt'ootlʼ dach awadset we tan clay. Hechwasaku gugsa ya yidatko. Gwash naskadusho ach katago we gao. Knachtucha. Ye awa ach tuasagu tu achi ko aya yidat. Wishkashnik ducheid. Ade yu awutani ya. Knachlakuzi. Ya de Kachledat yataya well actuasagu to ahi kaya de gartutu. Quella atina hiatiata hilvasaka pati. Yadua.
Ewe henia awe ito wasako we tukun takwani awe tlesak yakin taksa huanak sawe stuha o tuksin kostlesak has ʼáak kasni techo tes una koste kates kei I would say, Hotin, we tan now a hastiu, Nicket Hassak. Oh, it was, we chain a cow, Kasuit, you to a sack. Nashat, the Hendrick City. Yeah, the case cow, what is sack which could cow, yeah, it is night could spook. The container could do not go, city. Ewe dus kinei ewe sa hinda nat with the kaka kasiko kut ka sakuya ka eklochte tinde anate ewe kotes kaos ke ewe saku tinde yu wakut kana uhe kawa hinda na kut That's just the way it have it. I would say the corner with you the hine can look. That a good in a way. We can a cruise kitch. Yakan eat a course with art. Look at potato, say. Ja kan niet het koeslucht. Ook zou je ook is aard. We kan niet hinnen. De daai dat die we kan dat tegen. Ook is de dat kaart toeste. Kleine het ja de kaak zet is een dene staat door het. Ja, het gaat de kwede gaat tegen. Zo komt de kwede de goed shoot aan tien. Why not so it's a kutahun chuk away na hinda we kosati it's a toy na kesischinet one ni so hinda ja de danach duit oder tan ha tu yourselves our ka ʼakaduneek si kuo at huwe ka kesi kuske. Oce so kai katusu satsina yachat to sak satsin. Oye so kaha kan kuksaha. Oce adus da kechawatu kutestu. Este wasa usni. Oce kesoska. We kan han. Oce we tagi dewa te sta usk. Ja te sta ʼakaduneek. Te kat ja te sta ʼakaduneek dat katusu te tiris kasta bea. Ja ekut ja te akewa. Te kat ja te sta ʼakaduneek atsalis koe tagi te. Oce so kaha. Suhin kako. Suhin kako. Suke so ska. Suke te gana shukhis. Ja kootso. Suke sta us. Suhin te skawa na. Takunaes nasniawa. Sese na shukhis. Oce so ska gana khatikhis te. Te tewe. Ska. Te sia na keine terug te tegen ken. Het is gewoon nou gaan, dat is gewoon hier naar Tannie. Enige wat ze aan het woesten. Je het gewoon het was zoiets kwijt, je de street dat niet net. Als je het dewe, ja, een katoet naar Syrië. En kaas het heel door Sashi, wordt wel goed. Ja, she wordt ja als goed, ja, schiet ze kwatan. Ik hou aan Syrië door Sashi, zo goed is het te zaken. I'll tell you what it is after. Het is kawa na. Want Syrië komt daar goed. Het is zo goed. Geen dag het aan het is zo toe de krieg ook. Hoe zegt het zo? Ik ga nachtelijk de kaartje eten. Nou, dat is daar krijgen zo ik ga nachtelijk dat kindje gaat het uitschap. Ik ga het zo niet stil. Je Turkije de ʼakaduneek. Akashuna kutsu. Deze zitten nu uit de ʼakaduneek. Het is een kaartig zitten. Ze gaan ook het over zo T'aawáḳ aan Syrië. Zag tu T'aawáḳ. Kaik het T'aawáḳ. Ik hoor zo zegt het zo gaan het geen het gaat het uitschap. Ik hoor zo T'aawáḳ. Zoals ik hier van de stenen was. Gewoon toe uit het tegen hoe het de kracht ja wat je kan steden. Ujo sikawet. Oet ako to hin ayah usine. Satu to kun. Thana ni to sak. Kaya ni jo. Ja det ai til syv ekate. Oika pata tes asai ti ni katnikwe. Oet thana ka kich. Sakya saki kawa kanuk sakwa aten. Nu kakao yu sasin kijoy o sawa tan kanche. Saksike aten. Awa tu na tu ta hunwe tu kak. Ta koi sahutsu. Sa khwasta tel ka sel ke ko kunai skut. Te chucho akate hatta wachega o to watsak. Te shutach te kich te sakeo te ja kike to si. Ik had niks aangekauwd hier. Zodat kunao ni sakao sai hukun. Awa tu dat ja gaat kun het ja sin saewa hukun. Awa kunako kasku kuch sit je hokko. Sa kuna sewa te kunako. At je kucho se hine hukun te kak. Was het zien zo ja dan net heel kostelijk. Sa in te tintin. Daar kan ik het gewoon zo. Awa jak se ooit aan. Ooit gewoon sakit. Ooit de toetjes zie ake wa goed. Ja ki nou kawa kustig ik wat se ooit aan. Dat is sakai na nuka ooit de kinderos ne ooit aan kwa. Zie de kinderkeer zo goed. In de shana wat zou ooit de pas karen zou dat de hoed kese kawa. In zijn den gaat wat die als de schade hana te die. Jo oe kawe. We kak at kahas iu do sa. We is naked. Ocho de han. Oe gaat tutti. Dit sadak wa goed ja aan siu. Gaat schawe dak wa goed. Gaat dit sakau. Dit zo ga aan kaase. Gaat schawe. Ocho na goed ja kwik na goed. Ja gekauwe. Tijd gaat dat ze tu giet dat die. Oe keus geen ja. Tak skiu tu sa ja goed. Oe ja te gaat die. Kekelijk. Ze gaat ook keus kan jan zes wat kous giet. Ze geen na goed. Oe ta net gaat kniet ja kwa echt dat giet. Zo zo kwastje. Ze gaan na stuk. Je kunt doen goed hoe de kakao wat je tanken. Ik in kou je gaat je kijken kind eeuwig als je niet leek. Ze ik in de is kan je was nieuw is de kakao het wees. Ja wat je. Kakao zei het kan na goed je goed ze goed gaan naar zich. Je kou de knie. Ja, die kwart staat er was taka de kak zet zo de ziet wat die wordt daar. Awa ko hin kwa kuita wat zaak de schaar tu kakut chin you tu zaken. Hoe kan daar toch tu jo het wat je nou dat so. I know Tahini would good. I do it away, in that we do it to cock. Waiting to start our stuck ʼakaduneek. And what the cock set our, said, do the G or 10. The eetí and ʼáak. ʼakaduneek said, ʼakaduneek in a name. Yeah, set our teaching. We saw it to the cottage that to stick. I chase with school and was at the circle. So with the cock side, was the side was the caswit. With the shut side, to chase with school and a quart. Oh, yeah, we now reach power our siku. Yeah, canik has the whole nail, axati no shots and go get the shit and go catch up. It was ʼáak say tiu. I said, ʼakaduneek case with school. I said, ʼakaduneek, ʼakaduneek go high to school. Yeah, and she was 10 years ʼakaduneek.
Tu so uwahin with yes,
It was ʼáak say tiu. I said, ʼakaduneek case with school. I said, ʼakaduneek go high to school. Yeah, and she was 10 years ʼakaduneek.
Tu so uwahin with ton.
Every T'aawáḳ.
T'aawáḳ.
That's what
Yes, the cockatoo.
yes,
Dukt'ootlʼ.
no ʼáak.
So,
Yeah. You 6 days to go and go hot that even academic.
oh,
That's
how did you get the tune with you was wanting to go in again?
Kuna hasawa yesu ni.
That's good.
Yeah.
Geez.
That after so you could get to the aadé Lingi trainer like cock in a eetí. يخرجي أخكي هستقصي أخكي وتي هستقصي أجري دكاك كاشق أيات كيلك يا جاكود دكيلك هستين يخلين الخصي تخ أتخستي أدوي أدي أوي كيوتتي وديه يقاقاق أجوي يبني يأوي يخرجي خو أخوي أداتيو هسخوت أتكن يا خاجاقته قوشتخو إيش أكلين قو هستو تندتاني توخ إيوتي يدكتو خواسا أتوني
Gudaksu da.
لازم
ʼakaduneek. Gudaksu Gudaksu da.
هينيا
Clig Ermine Don da.
Oh da
Yeah.
Dugu, Showa,
Da.
Showa, Chin.
we
Wasiku like shawach
Well, cook with the goody, I had the cock with the hooch. The cock eetí de with the hun. I got the cock shut ye to shut husati. Wega, wash with that do go to cheetah with me. I got the shahaw hook with him. At your way, wash on away, ye else. Ha cut, ha like, ha shut the honey eusati. Ka a chuch away wa ya that. Kallis kwa at Is a coach was ye we shawat tesha to us go we think it shawat wunai was a cow hately at cook we ka a de cook were good was the hooch by ka has it woo nick John ko a ye sling it I just shawat to nach away ye cook was tea. Ajaway one means we ka wunayi ka shat ayat ishat gursati or ka awewa. One means to Goshwe shawat ka ani he wuti or ka wuna one means is ya ka. Adachna ya dachna gu. Ye awetling get kosti it a'ak. Ka do ani de wugu. Kek shawat shan aye wuti in shkakwe. Do chuk wuna tuk on. Kaye has yawaka. Go jakudani de. Akashkakwe ayari kuwu. One kanin's called has to keiki has kukwasha ya art.
C'est Khan, Shah et Latsinka. Da, Shkalniki. Whoosh. This.
Okay. Ja, der Dukt'ootlʼ. Ja, hit ich was dakun we gas. Ja, ka yilkata. Tluk gandutluk. Qunaqdate qunaqdate kolkiwi. Tluk tishuga ja. Qunaqdate su we just naska hosatin ja. Ka Dukt'ootlʼ ja do ka qanakh ati qanakhtidi qatakuneti wushdakh has yawsadaq has yawsadaq.
We number dog at lati at shinget tundatani shinget shkasniki. Dog dahin Dukt'ootlʼ we hinde gut. We see it a lot. The number 4.
Yeah, away dakundi. Yeah, away.
Tlach ach twasigu we yukatangi we atgalku
Hmm.
we atgalku we shin kayi we ach wugut ada you tuchatangi nooch atlen ach tunda tani adat
Away sheen chayi awa achbukut. Okay. Atqatku. Atqatleku. We ichki klingit. Kana atlein I. Jiwanak. Jinak nooch. That's a thing that okay. What's a teen jayaku genki? Kaukt. Katishdatli at. So a die jakbaniko. Echwajian geen. Just yata. Wait, that's you. Has to cool. Wait, that's a geen you do a song. Gwashye. We jenake kutzati. His katin hosaku. The katate geen. Naskeke hehosaku.
That's good. Like handed Cajun Jinkat. Guksa Kak et Dukt'ootlʼ. Where does it change from talking about the uncle to our hero?
Yeah, dear. Actually, we kakoa. Away Dukt'ootlʼ. Here that did a hatanka. Kesha kosi yachiti each cook. Just the cut tan our jockey. Kesha to our oshkuun. This data tinaksa ieti. Kwashteich. Just the cut at koa. Hichwasaku wanachsaya. Kwashwait etsu. Uke wuti has to kosti. Ajoi akawa a'ak. He has tan shadda honey our jockey. Ye awa adat you tachotangatsu. Wanachsaya ye yawasni. Aka away. Kunach uke wuti. Kakt ye awsne gwashki we. The cut with tan our jock. Each kach. Okay. Like how you katangitin. Wasa. What now? That's the way you did. How's it? Thoughts, questions, reflections?
Is Wutan and Chin or Wut and Chin the same thing? And why did they spell it two different ways if they were going to put it in quotes?
Where was that?
Chin, CH, it is line 201 or 20, it's 204 on yours.
Oh, okay. Oh, this one?
Yes, and then in English they did it in quotes as chain.
Yeah. ʼakaduneek with chin. So I would say the translation is maybe not quite matching here. I would say this is what we call it to tie your hair up into a top knot. And so the top knot, I think, had two purposes. Like you would tie your hair into a top knot, just like you do now, if you're going to go to shoot, if you're going into the cold water to bathe and to strength train, you would usually tie your hair up on the very top of your head. That's just how you do it. But you would also, and I think there might be a slightly different verb, but it might have shakilchin or something. Eetí was recorded saying it. But the other time you would do it is when it's time to fight. So your hair was usually down or probably braided, and you usually had ochre in your hair and downy feathers. And if you saw the feathers and the ochre, and it's like, everything's good. Hey, we're just hanging out. Well, if someone comes at you and their hair is tied up, you're like, oh, it's fighting time. Unless, because we're not going bathing, are we? Oh, no. And so, but that is the verb, I believe, for and it means to ribbon, but it really means to tie your hair up, I think. Let's go take a look.
Does Dukt'ootlʼ mean strong man?
Dukt'ootlʼ means black skin. And so you do have, there's a couple of things that do this same type of thing where you have, I'll just show you some examples. So we know t'ooch, which is charcoal, but then there's t'ootlʼ, which is something a little different. I'd have to go look, but I know here's some other examples of where this type of thing happens. There's this very slight difference. There is, oh no, I thought of this one, so we'll just have to do it. So these are two closely related things, k'oot and k'ooch. And let's see if I remember this right. K'oot is a squeaky fart, and k'ooch is a silent fart. So those are very similar things, right? And then let's see. So you've got cuts. It is sharp, and then you have kach, porcupine, which comes from sharp hair, but you have this very slight switch, right? And there's a few of them that do this. And it's really interesting to notice, you could say, wook, they have mental fortitude, and wooch, they are stubborn, right? So, and for Tlingit, it's sort of like there's this very, like there's a fine line between that. Like you could be very determined, but you can also be stubborn, right? And it's like you took that determination just maybe one step too far. And maybe you're trying to have a silent one, you had a squeaky one. I don't know. But that's where you get this. So you say duke is skin, duke. There was always this, some kind of charcoal remnant on his skin, which was because he would strength train by himself, and then he would go and pee where the fire was going out, and that would come up and warm his body because the fire was already, it had already gone out because he went way at night all by himself when everybody was asleep. And so the fire was already out, so he couldn't really warm himself on it, but he would pee on it and that would warm him up. But that soot would rise up and just made his body dirty. And that's why people made fun of him. They said he was The ʼakaduneek is really not nice. It means like sort of like there's vomit on it. And then there was another one where they said he was dirty. And then there's a cool verb on here too, if we go up to the strength training part, where they talk about him crying out. So this goes here. So this verb, ʼakaduneek, means they went, because that's what you're supposed to say when you are enduring pain in Tlingit. It's the Tlingit approach. I try to get my kids to do it. There's like, it's like, this is what you do when you're in pain. That's how you release the pain. And they would do that while soaking in the water as well to get themselves ready. Because sometimes you'd have to go fight. And if you got fight, you got hurt, you'd have to release that pain. And this was one of the ways they did that with a real low sort of sound like that. But that's why it says "hu" in the. And when you look it up, I think it's in Lear's notes where I said, they said "who." They cried out "ooh." Right? Other thoughts, questions? Big story.
Santa Kahinik, Yayati, Dukt'ootlʼ, at the Juneau Trading Post.
Okay.
Gas, the Dukt'ootlʼ.
Yeah, I mean, it's all over the place. It certainly is something claimed by aadé, and T'aawáḳ. It did happen outside on the Hania area. I'm not sure it was on the west side of the islands or the east side of the islands, probably on the west. East George Davis went to that reef when he was a boy. And when he told me about it, he said his uncles took him there. And they got off and they were standing on that reef, that island. And they said, this is where it happened. And he said, I wish I would have like written it down, or like, he couldn't remember where it was, but he just knew he had been there when he was younger. eetí So let's play it by ear. 2 weeks we can spend like a month with every one of these books. And so we'll see what we get to. We might not do every story in there, but we'll do the 2 versions of the what. So we do have that. There's Tom Peters, Yishnawu, and there's Nakishan, Frank Dick. So those are our 2 storytellers. And just to sort of reminisce, when we listen to, so these are 2 versions from 2 different places, a speaker from Yakutat and a speaker from Tessin. The one was recorded in the 1970s, early 1970s, when my great-grandfather was still alive, because they recorded him when they went to Skagway both times, went through Skagway. But this was the first story that was ever fully transcribed and translated, the one from Tessin. And then the one from Yakutat was recorded by Frank Dick. And the really wild thing about Frank Dick is he was recorded a lot in the 80s by Fred White, who did amazing stuff with his grandpa. That's his grandpa. And Kuchain, Frank Italio, a Shungu Katie from Yakutat, was recorded in the 1950s when he was probably 80, 90 years old. And then 30 years later, I guess, Frank Dick is recorded, and he's probably in his 80s or 90s at that point. And when you look at some of the Raven stories that they told, we'll look at some examples. They're almost identical in the ways that they tell them, which is really wild. It's really, really neat. And so, but you do get a little bit of differences between these 2 versions. So there's so much stuff to dive into with the language that's in all of these stories. And so think about that as you sort of continue to engage with these, like as an upper is an advanced level learner. Like they could show you so much amazing stuff. And it might be stuff you're just beginning to catch now. Like if you put nooch after a verb, it should always be a -I classifier. Right. And so there might be a bit more to it than that, but just at least check that box. Like, oh yeah, that switches it back. So you'd say ʼaawáḳ. And if you look at it and then you're saying ʼaawáḳ nooch. And so, or yeah, and so it was awu as opposed to awa. And so just looking at that and how that can sort of create some changes in your language. Lots of +I classifiers where the letter I gets dropped from here, which is really ʻaqen. It's just wild to me. Outqen. It's like, but it's so fun. It's so fun to see. And I think there's a lot of possibility of really documenting these things and really trying to develop some Haina language curriculum that just looks at some of that stuff and does teach people how it would be said among Southern Tlingit. Okay, there's Chish. Anything else? Thoughts, questions, reflections? Chish Tleinu, huh? Yevush Gachtisti.
That's cheese.
Okay.